Flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome everyone. The mayor is sick tonight, so you have me. We're going to have a presentation. We're going to do our regular meeting first, when we'll do comments after the presentation. We have Bill Freitag and Ken Goldoni, who did the rate study, and they're going to do a presentation for us. So at this time, roll call.
Trustee Pelkey.
Here.
Trustee Bernard.
Here.
Trustee Southwick.
Present.
Trustee Arno.
Present.
Mayor LaBounty. Absent.
And minutes of the January 5th. Everyone should have a copy of the January 5th minutes. Is there any mistakes or anything that we need to discuss or have corrected?
I make a motion we accept the minutes as printed.
Second.
I have a motion seconded. All those in favor of accepting the minutes, say aye.
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 Those opposed? Minutes are accepted. Bills. Everybody should have a copy of the bills. Is there any discussion on the bills? Is there any?
No additions or deletions this evening.
No additions? If nothing, no discussion, take a motion to pay the bills.
I make a motion to pay the bills as printed.
Second.
I have a motion and seconded. All those in favor of paying the bills, so aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passed. Correspondence. Mr. Administrator.
I have one thing for correspondence. I received a text message from Mr. Patrick Canning indicating that he's going to need to resign from the Zoning Board of Appeals due to personal issues. So at this point in time, I would ask the board to accept Mr. Canning's resignation from the ZBA board.
I make a motion we accept this resignation.
Second. I have a motion and seconded. All those in favor of accepting Mr. Canning's resignation, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passed. Reports of mayor and trustees. I have a resolution tonight. Village of Rouses Point mileage reimbursement resolution 2026-5. Whereas the Board of Trustees of the Village of Rouses Point, New York, has determined to pay a fixed rate for mileage as reimbursement to officers and employees of the village who use their personal automobiles while performing their official duties on behalf of the village. Therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Rouses Point shall approve reimbursement to such officer and employees at the rate of 0.725 cents per mile, in accordance with the 2026 IRS standard mileage rates for business. This resolution shall take effect immediately, and roll call vote.
Trustee Pelkey.
We have a motion and a second to, motion to accept resolution 2026-5.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Trustee Pelkey.
Aye.
Trustee Bernard.
Aye.
Trustee Southwick.
Aye.
Trustee Arno.
Aye.
Mayor LaBounty. Absent.
And the resolution has passed. Okay. Bill, I guess we're going to go with you next, Mr. Freitag.
Okay, great. Everybody can hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Bill Freitag. I'm a senior partner with the accounting firm BST. Just to give you a real quick background on our experience in this area. BST has been involved with municipal electric utilities for the last 40 years. I've been a big part of that for also the last 40 years. And we have done work for 40 of the 48 municipalities in New York State that provide electric service. And in addition, and specific to this presentation, we have a long history of preparing rate filings with either the Public Service Commission or the New York Power Authority. And I personally have been involved in about 60 of those rate filings in the last 30 years. Just to give you an idea of where we are in the process here, the Village of Rouses Point formally submitted a rate filing to the New York State Public Service Commission on June 10th of 2025, after working with the village and putting together all the necessary forecasts and schedules that the PSC needs to approve rates. One of the reasons, how do we get to the rate filing situation at Rouses Point? If we go back to 2014, the Village of Rouses Point Electric Utility, since 2014, has generated net operating losses for their electric utility for 12 consecutive years, starting in fiscal year May 31st, 2014, and it carried forward through May 31st, 2025. So we're sitting on 12 consecutive years of net operating losses. And in that same time, the way the PSC determines the need for rate increases based upon what they have a rate of return model. In each of those 12 years since 2014, Rouses Point has generated negative rate of returns on the operations of its electric utility. Where the PSC currently stands right now, they are looking to give any or most municipal electric utility systems a 4.5% rate of return. Rouses Point over the last 12 years has had negative rate of returns ranging anywhere from 0.5% negative rate of return all the way up to almost 10% negative rate of return. So that's where we stand here, and this is why, the main reason why Rouses Point went in for a rate filing in June of 2025 was to put together a rate filing, a rate increase filing, to generate additional revenues from increased rates so that they could have the ability to meet the current day-to-day operational needs in terms of cash flow, the ability to make necessary capital improvements to the electric utilities equipment, and the ability to build cash reserves to fund the future replacement of existing equipment. And then finally, to generate a fair and reasonable rate of return that the electric utility could reinvest into the system so that you can have a long, financial, stable system going into perpetuity. So that's where how we got to where you are as of the rate filing situation. Basically, the Village of Rouses Point's electric utility had done very, very well from a financial perspective and a financial stability perspective in the 1990s and the early 2000s. Going into 2014, was the first year that you generated a net operating loss, and then the subsequent 12 years of generating net operating losses, you were able to, for a while, kick the can down the road in increasing rates because of the financial stability that the electric utility had coming into the 2014 fiscal year. So basically, in a nutshell, the rates that are in place, currently in place, which went into place in the 1980s, which were put into place by the New York Power Authority, who regulated your electric utility back then, the gross profit margin that was built into those customer rates that still exist today started to erode with the passage of time. Increased costs due to increased mandatory costs, increases in inflation. It basically just eroded the the profit margins that are in your existing customer rates. And in 2014, you saw the first part of that erosion. And then since then, the gross profit margin has been chipped away because of increased costs to the point where your existing customer rates and the revenues produced by those customer rates were no longer providing you with the ability to meet your day-to-day operating costs. So back in June of 2025, the village made a formal submission to the New York State Public Service Commission to raise its rates and its related revenues from those new rates. And the way that works is you do a formal submission to the Public Service Commission based upon your existing known costs to operate your electric utility, using the existing known revenue stream from your customer demand that's in place, and coming up with a reasonable rate of return based upon all those assumptions. Then, after you do that formal submission to the Public Service Commission, which again was last June, the Public Service Commission, in their process, does their due diligence to review your assumptions and the forecasts that you've made in your rate filing for future costs and future revenues. They then make adjustments to your proposed expenses and proposed revenues and your proposed rate increase, and they come back to the Village of Rouses Point and saying that we agree with you here, we disagree with you here, we believe it's this number versus that number. You have the ability to provide them additional information to support your forecasted amount. But at the end of the day, the Public Service Commission has the final word in regards to what they believe your forecasted operational costs are going to be, what your forecasted operational revenues are going to be, and then the Public Service Commission is responsible for designing new rates in the form of a rate increase to provide you with enough new revenue from your customers as a result of those rates to not only meet your operational costs that they believe you will have in future periods, but also allow you to provide for a capital improvement program that is necessary, and allow you to have a rate of return which is what they consider reasonable for municipal electric utilities. At the point that Rouses Point filed in June of 25, when we prepared the rate filing to submit to the PSC, the rate of return that was allowed for the PSC at that time was 4% rate of return. That rate of return has now since risen in recent municipal electric utility rate cases to about 4.5%. So a 0.5% increase in the reasonable rate of return that the Public Service Commission is allowing for. So going back to Rouses Point's formal submission of forecasted operational costs and forecasted operational revenues, in order to achieve the 4% rate of return that was in effect in June of 2025, it was determined by our firm doing the rate case, working with village representatives, that in order to achieve that 4% rate of return, that the Village of Rouses Point was going to have to increase the revenue to generate new revenues by about $1 million on an annual basis. Where did that stand, the $1 million versus what was in existence at the time? Is that your operating revenues that come from your customer rates have been averaging about $650,000 a year. In order to meet the forecasted expenses, the forecasted capital improvements, and to generate a 4% rate of return at the time, it was determined that the village needed to raise an additional $1 million of customer revenues to meet all those requirements. So the $1 million was a significant increase to customer revenues, base revenues, given the fact that you were at about $650,000 a year prior to that. As a result, the new additional revenues were going to projected to increase about 153%, which in turn, when you go to design rates to achieve that $1 million of additional revenues, that meant that the customer rates were probably going to have to go up about the same percentage, about 150% of existing customer base rates. As I said before, the Public Service Commission does their due diligence on what it was Rouses Point provided them in their forecast of what their needs were expected to be. The PSC is still reviewing your rate case. They have postponed the rate case effective date of the new rates coming into place. They postponed it 3 times, largely because of their internal structure and their internal workload at the PSC. It had nothing to do with Rouses Point. It was all internally at the Public Service Commission. They were experiencing some staffing issues. They just could not get the rate case closed out for you in the time that we would have liked to be closed out. So as we sit here today at this meeting, the Public Service Commission is still in their due diligence review. The next step that we believe will happen from the Public Service Commission is that they will provide you with proposed adjustments to the village's rate case that was submitted last June. They will then schedule what's called an exit conference. And I don't really like to use the term exit conference because it sounds kind of final. However, at the exit conference, the village is allowed to review the proposed adjustments, whether those be decreasing adjustments or increasing adjustments from the Public Service Commission. And then what the Public Service Commission comes up with to determine the new revenues that are needed by Rouses Point to hit all their goals of cash flow needs, cash reserve needs, capital improvements, and the rate of return. At that point in time, the exit conference of the Public Service Commission that we'll have with village representatives will go over, and the village has the ability during that exit conference to say to the Public Service Commission, we believe that your adjustment is incorrect because of this or that, and you have the ability to provide additional information to the Public Service Commission to prove your case in that situation of what you believe would be the proper adjustment to your accounting and reporting for the electric utility. Or you could just as easily accept the PSC's proposed adjustments. At that point in time, the village then has the ability to meet without the Public Service Commission, and you have the ability to say, we are going to agree with the PSC's adjustments and the rates that the PSC has come up with. Or you can say that you disagree with the PSC's adjustments to that significant of a nature that you would withdraw. You have the ability to withdraw the existing rate filing with the PSC. If you decide to say that the PSC's adjustments were reasonable and their adjustments were not significantly different than what the village proposed or what the village believes they need, then you can get back with the PSC and say, we approve your adjustments, we approve the rates that you have designed for the Rouses Point, and we approve the related revenues that will be generated from those new rates. Once you give the PSC that go-ahead on the approval, the PSC staff members then submit the rate case to the trustees of the Public Service Commission, and at that point, it is very rare that the Public Service Commission trustees would decline the rate case. At that point, it's usually an approval process, and once the trustees of the Public Service Commission approve the rates, which Rouses Point has already approved, then you, the Public Service Commission will execute the approved commission order, and your new rates will go in effect within 30 days of that approval. However, you must, certainly be aware that you will. You don't have the final say in the approved rates, but you have the final say in approving the adjustments that design the new rates, or if you totally disagree with the Public Service Commission to a significant nature, then you can formally withdraw the rate filing from further review, and then the rates will stay as they are today. So I wanted to give you that process of where you are today, what the process is from the PSC's point of view, what options you have, and what the criteria is of you approving the rates and then having subsequent formal approval by the trustees of the PSC. So I think that a couple other things I can add in regards to how your specific rate filing was prepared. From the cost side, the costs were based off of actual historical information, adjusted for what's called future known changes. So for example, the easiest one to look at is labor dollars. If you believe that your labor dollars are going to have an increase because of wage increases, those are built into the new rates. The same thing goes for things like employee benefits, Social Security, medical, retirement. All that is based upon actual costs that the utility has incurred in the past, updated for future known changes, whether those be increases or decreases. And then you come down and you establish your operating costs in total, what you need. You compare that to the existing operating revenues, and that takes into consideration what your normal customer load is. As it has been over the last several years, it's been fairly consistent. But the revenue stream is based upon existing customer demand and does not take into consideration any additional customer demand. If you were to try to include additional revenues, you would have to, again, prove that to the PSC, just like you'd have to prove your cost or provide substantial evidence in regards to the cost. You'd have to do the same thing on the operating revenue side. So given the fact that we submitted a rate case that called for a 150% or so increase in additional revenues to establish the necessary criteria in regards to rate of return, that did not take into consideration additional customer demand on purchase power, on the purchase side of power. The village has an allotment of hydropower from the New York Power Authority that will not change. Each municipal electric utility in the state of New York has I call it the slice of the pie that the New York Power Authority provides on hydro allotment. Every municipality has a ceiling on its hydro allotment, and that will not change. If you sold up to your hydro allotment on a monthly basis, you would generate additional revenues from that hydro allotment, which would help, which would help the profitability of the utility. If you hit your hydro allotment every month, you still, it is our strong belief that you would still need a rate increase to generate additional revenues to meet your rate of return requirement, as the selling of additional hydro in your hydro allotment would not get you to the $1 million number that you would need on additional revenues. So even if you did sell your hydro allotment to your ceiling, we strongly believe, based upon the forecast that we put together for the Public Service Commission, we believe that you would still need a rate increase, probably not to the magnitude that currently is of $1 million in revenue, but it would be something, fairly significant, given where the electric utility has been over the last 14 years, where the electric utility is going, is still in need of generating at about $1 million. And whether you get that through new rates, increased rates to increase additional base revenues, or you get a portion of that from the sale of additional hydropower, you're still looking at, based upon the way the numbers have flowed out, you're still looking at about $1 million need of additional revenues, whichever way you slice that. So I think that's a pretty good global view of your rate increase that was submitted in June of 2025, where you have been since 2014 as a utility, and going back just to add a little bit further analysis to the losses that you have sustained for 12 consecutive fiscal years and generated fairly large negative rate of returns. Your operating cash balances have decreased on an annual basis during those 12 years, anywhere from $200,000 in a given year all the way up to $700,000 as a high. So for each of the last 12 fiscal years, the electric utility not only has generated net operating losses, but has decreased its operating cash balances somewhere about, on an average annual basis, of about $300,000 or $400,000. So further providing proof that the utility has struggled for the last 12 years has to generate additional revenues to meet its operational costs, to generate a reasonable rate of return, and we believe that that amount of money is about $1 million that was forecasted and provided to the Public Service Commission to do their due diligence in their review. So I think that that's kind of all my prepared remarks, and hopefully that was understandable, and that I hit upon some of the things that you were concerned about in regards to the rate case. And if anybody has any questions, whether that be now or in the future, we are very available to answer any of those questions.
Bill, one thing, if you could please mention, how much revenue does the Village of Rouses Point make on the supplemental?
On the supplemental power? Okay. In fiscal year 2024, which was the last information that I had available, you generated $655,000 in your base revenue. Base revenue meaning the kilowatt hours sold to your customers, multiplied out by the rates that are currently in the tariff, and then your supplemental power that is basically passed on to the customer on a dollar-for-dollar basis through a process known as the PPAC process, was about $800,000. So it was $150,000 higher than the base revenue generated by your customer rates that are in your tariffs. So the supplemental power purchases, which also include your transmission charges, and also your costs related to the IEEP, the Independent Energy Efficiency Program, is passed on to the customer on a dollar-for-dollar basis, so that the entire cost of supplemental energy and supplemental other type costs are the burden 100% by the customer, and there is no benefit or detriment to the Village of Rouses Point's electric utilities. It's a complete pass-through of the cost at 100%. So you're sitting on $650,000 of base revenues that generate your profit for you, and about $800,000 of supplemental revenue from supplemental power costs. Does that answer your question, Chris?
So basically, the Village of Rouses Point makes $0 off of supplemental power that's sold. The only revenue source is our allocation of the hydro of the 13.7. That's the only money that the village makes from the electric sales. Is that correct?
That's correct, because your customer rates that are in your tariff piece, a portion of that customer rate has a gross margin in it, which allows you to be profitable. But depending on your cost structure, as time has gone on, that gross profit margin has eroded and is no longer meeting the needs of the Village of Rouses Point from an operational cost standpoint. But the supplemental charges for power purchases and energy efficiency programs is passed on to the customer dollar for dollar. And then at the end of the year, there's a reconciliation or a true-up that says, okay, this is the supplemental cost of Rouses Point for the year, X dollars. How much was our supplemental revenue? Something different, and then they're usually pretty close, but a true-up is then done through the reconciliation. And if you have underbilled the supplemental power, you get to recover that in the next fiscal year through the PPA process. Or if there is an overcollection or overbilling of supplemental power, you get to give that back to your customers in the next fiscal year through the PPA process again. So that gives you the dollar for dollar burden to your customer, and that you're truing it up to make sure that you have passed through the proper amount of your supplemental power to your customers, no more, no less. Therefore, the true up is very important to happen in the period after the fiscal year ends, because you're allowed, the Public Service Commission allows you to true up your PPA revenues or your supplemental revenues after your fiscal year ends to be recovered in the next fiscal period. Does that make sense, Chris?
It does. Now, one of the other conversations that we had, you and I and our Sen and the mayor, back when we were considering doing this rate study back in 2025, we all knew that we had extra hydropower on the table that was not being sold, and that would make a difference as far as for what the amount of the rate increase would be. In the conversations that we had, and Ken as well, is we can't go based upon what is, we need to go based upon what our current revenues are. And if those what ifs do happen and we have a long-term commitment down the road, and we see that we're above that 4.5% profit margin set by the PSC, we can always file for a rate reduction. Is that correct?
Yes, I mean, if you sold more kilowatt hours of power to get you up to your hydro allotment on a monthly basis, then the revenue that you would need, that we are projected at $1 million of additional revenue, would be less, because you're selling more kilowatt hours at a rate that has a profit margin built into it, even though that profit margin is somewhat eroded. However, just like you have to prove your cost to the PSC so that they can approve the new rates, you also have to prove to them your revenue stream. And the PSC will not entertain a revenue stream that is fairly unknown at the time, where there is no contract or there is no commitment. They would basically say at that point in time, that's why it was not built into your rate case. If something changes down the road where you end up selling a lot more of your hydro allotment, then absolutely you could go in for a rate decrease. It's rare, but it has happened within the municipalities in New York State. One off the top of my head that I can think of is Messina. Went for a rate decrease in the late 1990s. They have since gone up twice since then. Yes, the formal submission of your rate filing back in June of 2025 needed to be made on existing conditions and not taking into consideration you still had ability to meet your hydro allotment in terms of revenue, but that was not happening. They would need to know that they have a contract in place with customers or a customer, and would need some sort of commitment, because they're probably not going to design rates on something that, you know, might happen or may only happen for a short period of time. And that's why I think, and Ken Pedone, the attorney's on the phone right now, that's why I think that Rider A to the Public Service Commission's tariff lease plays an important role whenever you bring in a significant customer that could bring in additional revenues to the village, but also has the ability to push the cost of using that extra power to the specific customer or customers, and not affect the general population of the electric utility customers. So yes, long-winded answer to your question, Chris, but there's no doubt that you can go in for a rate decrease if things change on both sides. If you have some sort of situation where your costs are going to go up that you didn't think was going to happen, you can go in for another rate increase. Such as the same for revenues. If something changes dramatically, where your customer base has increased tremendously, that would affect your revenue stream, you can go in for a rate decrease. The only thing that is a restriction, and I think I have this right, is that you cannot go into the PSC for a new rate increase or a rate decrease until the new rates were in place for a 1-year period. So that kind of holds your feet to the fire. You can only go in at minimum on a once-a-year basis. You can't go in twice a year, 3 times a year. Does that answer your question, Chris?
Thank you, yes.
What is the difference between our allotment and what we've been selling over like the past 2 or 3 years? Don't count Pfizer in, but like the last 2 or 3 years, do you know what the difference?
Did you hear that, Bill?
The last, yeah, I got that. Let me just see. I got some information for you. I have information that actually goes through 2024's fiscal year, and it goes all the way back to 2015. But I don't have information in relation to how much megs you were using, but I can tell you that your kilowatt hours sold since 2019 has ranged anywhere from 39,000 kilowatts, 39 million kilowatts in a given year to 47 million kilowatt hours in a given year. And those are the numbers from 2019 through 2024. So there are some aberrations in there, but basically I would say that the average over that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-year period was that we were selling about 40 to 42 million kilowatt hour a year to our customers.
How does that work
So
with
it's
the
very
13.7? You said we had 13.7 allotment versus what are we selling?
Our demand last month, Bill, was 11.2. Our allocation is
Okay.
13.7, so we're 2.5 off the
Last
allocation.
month.
Peak demand.
winter.
Peak demand.
But
Peak
like over the
demand,
last
not
couple of years,
continuous.
what's it averaging?
What was your total kilowatt hours?
What's that?
What was the total kilowatt hours last month? Wasn't 7.2 megawatts. Wasn't bad. Or 11.2, whatever you said. Not bad.
I have a question for William.
Go ahead.
You said that we don't get any financial benefit from selling the supplemental power. So if we sell like 25 megawatts of power, including all the hydro allotment and everything else beyond that is supplemental, we don't make any money from the supplemental power? It's just a pass-through with no benefit?
That's correct. It's passed on dollar for dollar to the customer.
However, the more
That's
power you
no
sell,
benefit to the Rouses Point electric utility.
so the more power you sell though, the PPAC, the supplemental that gets spread out amongst everyone else, goes down. It's dollar for dollar for payment. I'm sorry, can you hear me okay?
I can hear that, okay, yeah.
Okay. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but the more power you sell, the PPAC as a whole will go down. It won't go, it'll go up, it'll go down as a smaller percentage, so that each resident will see a lower cost for the PPA if the overall consumption is higher.
Not if it's above the peak demand. The more supplementals power you
Did you
sell,
hear
the
that?
higher the PPAC rate is.
Bill, did you hear that question?
Yeah, I mean, it's by selling more and going into your supplemental power that's going to be provided by NIMPA, the New York Municipal Power Agency, that's going to be well over and above your base cost of power, and then therefore your present purchase power cost, your actual power cost over your base power costs that are built into your rates is going to increase the PPA load on all customers unless you go to rider A on the high density load requirement, and then therefore the way that's supposed to work, and Ken can help us on that a little bit, is that the regular customers are not going to be affected by the high density load customer under the rider A. If you don't employ the rider A and you're at the, let's say, the industrial rates in the tariffs, the entire customer base, residential, commercial, industrial, will be subject to the increase in PPA revenues as a result of the increase in supplemental power purchases.
Yeah, I think just to back up a little bit, it matters whom you sell the power to. So just saying that selling more power, it matters whether your existing customers are using more power versus you're getting new customers. All of those things matter in how your revenue base would change and whether or not you would make, there would be more profitability for the company. And yes, Bill is absolutely right with respect to rider A, that if all of the supplemental power was being used by a specific or a number of specific rider A customers, then the rest of the customer base would be held harmless and their energy costs would not go up.
I got a question. This is a hot topic in the village, actually, that 153%. I'm an accountant, accountant. I hate percentages. I absolutely hate percentages because you always got to take into account what the beginning number is. So we're going from a little over a penny to a little over 3 pennies. So my house has been the same electric rate for 15 years in the village. So you could say that I paid nothing the last 15 years and now we're basically catching up. But why is this 153 just like, wow, 153, all hell's freezing over, I'm fascinated by that. I mean, yeah, but you're going from a penny and a quarter to 3 1/4. And we're still going to be one of the lowest, if not the lowest, in the Power Authority conglomerate, whatever you want to call the 51 municipalities that are in there.
So the way the Public Service Commission expresses rate increases is percentage over your existing base rates, which is not the same as an increase to your power bill. Those two are not equivalent. So bills are not going up 153%, certainly. Base rates are, but your bill is not the base rates. But to your point, yes, your rates are still going to be some of the lowest in certainly the state and the country.
I take the approach for my house with what's happening to electricity across the country. For my house, it's going up $500, and I think I'm damn lucky. Because you mentioned Messina earlier. Found out today that Messina's rates are going up and people are flipping out, and it's happening everywhere. To me, that's how I look at it. That we've been fortunate.
As a matter of fact, I just got done fairly recently with an analysis of all the municipal electric utilities in the state. And over the last 3 or 4 years, many of the municipalities have gone in for rate cases with either the Public Service Commission or the New York Power Authority, depending on who they're regulated by. And the analysis that I just did for the 35 villages or municipal electric utilities that belong to the New York Municipal Power Agency, basically saying that the average cents per kilowatt hour for all customers across the board is somewhere in the 7 to 8 cents per kilowatt hour. That's across New York State. So obviously some are in the 3 cent or the 4 cent range that you're talking about. But there are others that are in the 9, 10, 11 cents. There are some as high as 13 cents a kilowatt hour. One of the reasons why is that a lot of villages had elected, for whatever reason, to not increase rates for a long period of time. We've had a couple of places where they didn't go in for a rate increase for 20 plus years, and then you've had the accumulation and the accrual of increases in costs, whether that be mandated costs or inflationary costs, and all of a sudden you're saying to yourself, geez, we haven't gone in for a rate increase in 20 years, and now we have to raise our rates, 75, 80% of what they were. All that means really is that as time had passed, that particular municipality should have gone in for rate increases more frequently at 10%, 11%, 12%, go in every 2 or 3 years. The Public Service Commission actually would appreciate you going in once a year. Probably not totally appreciate it, but maybe a little bit. Certainly less than 5 years. But a lot of municipalities, for whatever reason, decide not to go in for rate increases. And then that just accumulates and accrues over time. And then next thing you know, you're sitting on a rate that should have gone up 3 times in a 20 or 4 times in a 20-year period. Now you're all doing this at one time. And the percent increase looks significant on paper because boom, 150%, hits you right in the face. But at the end of the day, it's something that should have been increased as time went on to get to where we are versus this one-time sticker shock type of an increase. And but there's many reasons why people don't, boards and villages don't go in for rate increases.
Can I ask two easy, quick questions? Can I ask 2 easy, quick questions? Number 1, does the village have the authority to set its base rate, or do they have to go through you guys? The village can't do that, right?
The village has absolutely no authority to determine its rates. The only ability the village has is when they submit the formal rate increase, they propose rates that they believe they need to the Public Service Commission. The Public Service Commission reviews them, adjusts them, and then comes up with their rates. Once approved, their rates are in your tariffs, which Ken can expand on this a little bit. I believe they are considered New York State law at that point in time. And the village has no authority to charge anything different than what's in your tariff leads.
What if the village wanted? What if the village wanted to implement it over 3 years to save? Can they do that, or it's got to be all at once? Like say we wanted to do it over 3 years.
Yeah, that's a good question. More so recently than in the past, some villages have submitted rate increases that are at 2 phases. And maybe even 3 phases. I think the village of Teresa, near Watertown, had a 3-phase increase at one time. And therefore, taking those dollars and bringing them in over 2 years on a step rate or 3 years. The situation at Rouses Point, yes, you could probably do something like that and have this increase split over 2 years. But the fact of the matter is unfortunately, you painted yourself into a little bit of a corner where that $1 million additional revenues that you need are needed today to meet the next 12 months operational costs and to achieve the rate of return that the PSC is allowing. So if you deferred any of that $1 million additional revenues into 2 years, let's say 700,000 one year and then 300,000 year two, you're going to really struggle to get to that second year because your cash balances are eroding so much that by taking a partial jump into this $1 million of additional revenue, you're going to actually put yourself behind the 8 ball a little bit more in terms of your cash flow. The beauty at Rouses Point specifically is that it did have reasonable cash balances coming into the current period that we're in right now. Reasonable, but much less than it has over the last 10 years of decline. But one of the things that is helping Rouses Point out tremendously is that the electric utility currently has no long-term debt for any purchases of capital improvements. So there's no bond issuances or bond anticipation notes out there. So you don't have any debt service. But your cash flow has declined significantly in the last 14 years, probably to the tune of $2.5 million of operational cash. And you have no more reserve funds available to purchase new capital improvements or replace existing equipment. And so the format and the goal of the rate filing that's in place right now is not only going to get you to meet your operating cash flow needs, but it's going to allow you to build up your depreciation cash reserves so that you can finance future improvements. If you do this in a step and try to get this $1 million over 2 years or 3 years, you're going to fall further behind on your cash flow and your need for capital improvements. And you're not going to be able to establish the depreciation reserve cash reserve fund as quickly as you are probably going to need it. So, yeah, it can be done, 2-step, 3-step, it has been done. Sometimes the PSC comes back to a village and says, well, a perfect example just happened at the village of Philadelphia, near Watertown. They went in for a rate that was going to include the purchase of a new bucket truck. Well, because the timeline of getting a new bucket truck is out 3 years now, to get from the date of commitment to the day you receive the bucket truck, the PSC said, we're not going to allow you a rate today to pay for that bucket truck. When you buy the bucket truck, you'll have a second step rate increase. And that happened at the village of Philadelphia and the village of Teresa just recently, within the last 6 months.
I would like to clarify.
I
would like to clarify a scenario that's been presented to us. If we use 10 megawatts of power, our PPA is set at a certain rate. It varies, but there's an average rate for 10 megawatts of power. The scenario that's being presented to us is that if we use 40 megawatts of power a month, that the PPA would go down. Is that accurate?
No, because you have to be buying more supplemental power, and supplemental power is greater than the hydropower in terms of cost. And then therefore, if you don't use Rider A, all the customers in the village of Rouses Point their bills will inherently go up because of the more purchase of supplemental power, which is at a higher rate.
So at 40 megawatts of power, the PPA would be higher than at 10, unless Rider A kicks in. Is that correct? Sorry, I'm asking.
That would be.
Is that correct?
That would be correct.
Okay, so
that
now.
That would be correct, unless you use the Rider A for that specific customer or customers.
There's been no talk about Rider A in this conversation that I've heard. So thank you for the clarification.
We actually discussed the board meeting 2 months ago.
I haven't heard that.
Can I ask how much of that $1 million increase is going to go towards replenishing the funds that have been used over the last 12 years?
Doesn't go, there's no.
100%.
Of that $1 million, approximately $300,000. Let's get this right here. Yeah, approximately $300,000 of that $1 million is for depreciation expense on existing and future equipment. And technically, the way the rates are designed is that you should be able to put back cash reserves into what's called a depreciation cash reserve fund to finance future replacements of existing property. So of that $1 million, about $300,000 is related to the replenishment of reserves for future replacements.
Go ahead, Jim.
Is there currently a theoretical break-even point for the village since they sold X amount of power, or they neither lose money nor make money? Is there a break-even point?
The break-even point at this point would be, if I can do my math real quick here, is that in order to have a zero profit, you would have to raise about an additional $800,000 of revenue.
I'm asking about is there a break-even point in terms of megawatts sold where the village makes no money and loses no money? So if they sold 18 or 19 megawatts or something.
Yeah, I don't think I can answer that question that quickly on the phone here. Ken, you got anything?
That depends whom you sell it to and where you get it. So that's not a simple one-to-one answer. Because to sell more power, you need to buy more power. It depends on how much you're paying for that power and what rates you're selling it at. So it's not really possible to answer without a lot more information.
It's because the PPAC changes all the time, right? Isn't that really the problem?
Are you able to give us an estimate on if we were just to sell what we would have, like what we have left? So, Mr. Letourneau, you said we sold last month, like we used 11 point something megawatts for the month, so that left us a reserve of like 2 megawatts. 2.5.
That's a peak, that's not.
Like if we just sold what we had left, do you have any idea what type of revenue that would generate? I know you mentioned that we could potentially sell some and it might offset that $1 million cost we're all trying to aim for. I'm just curious how much it offsets it.
Yeah, we can do a calculation from that. I can't get that.
That's okay. I was just curious if it was an easy one, so no worries.
We can certainly get that number for you.
It'd be interesting to see what the numbers for the break-even point that would be. That's for sure.
Matt, you got a question?
Yeah, I just, one more question for you, Bill, is if by chance, let's say with some new economic development piece of the puzzle here, so a new company comes to town and we're able to increase our allotment, that is, I assume, an opportunity to make more money, and that's probably a situation where rates could potentially come down again in the future if the stars line up. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I can probably answer this better, but I do know that the New York Power Authority, which provides you with your hydropower, has made available additional allotment to some of the municipalities that are looking for economic development. And there usually is an economic development customer rate for those particular customers. Ken, do you got anything further on that?
So the short answer is yes. If you were able to qualify for an economic development allocation, there would be an opportunity there to potentially decrease or increase revenues and decrease the amount of unmet revenues that you have to recover. But it would depend again on the allocation. There are two types of these allocations. Occasionally, an allocation is made for the benefit of the specific customer. So the new allocation would go specifically to that customer. And in other instances, an allocation is made to the system essentially and spread among all of the customers, which is more beneficial. But there you have to demonstrate job creation or retention, and the amount of the new allocation directly corresponds to the jobs created per megawatt requested, essentially. So yes, there is opportunity there.
So the only way we can get more power allocated is through jobs, basically, right?
Yes.
Economic incentives.
That's correct.
Because, I mean, whether it's a question or a statement, I mean, when we stopped making money of power and the problem started was basically as Pfizer closed down, we lost our larger allotment, we now are allotted less power, and it puts us where we are today, really. So, just a statement, not really a question.
Right.
So thank you.
But you also had 2,000 jobs at Pfizer.
I don't disagree.
You know,
Yeah.
when the jobs left, so did the allotment.
Yep.
I was looking at the rate increase, or the rate study that was sent to the PSC, and it says from 2024 to 2025, the expenses were expected to increase about $256,000. Is that?
That's correct, yep.
And of that amount, $256,000 is on the labor line.
Yes.
So I'm just wondering if there's no growth of customers, so from 2021 to 2024, the variance in customers was 1, 2, 3. 3 customers at most. If there's no growth, then how can our labor go up that much from one year to the next?
You have our positions that were empty.
What you're looking at on that line item is labor dollars that are expensed versus being capitalized. So some of the labor that is done by the line crew is capitalized depending on the task that they're doing. If they're installing a new pole, those costs are being capitalized to the fixed assets, or what we call the operating property in the municipality. And that is part of what's considered your rate base. The other dollars that are used for repair and maintenance type tasks and other type tasks other than capitalized tasks are expensed. So the change in the total salaries, that line is not total salaries, but it's salaries that are anticipated to be expensed during the year versus capitalized. And there's 2 reasons why that went up significantly from one year to the next, is that by the time the new rates were to go in place, get approved by the Public Service Commission, the village was anticipating to have wage increases expected to go into effect on June 1st, 2024, June 1st, 2025, and June 1st, 2026. So there was going to be 3 wage increases in that time. So that had to be taken into consideration. And the addition, the village anticipated on adding 2 linemen that did not exist in fiscal year ended May 2024, and 1 electrician. So you were adding 2 new linemen, you were adding 1 electrician to what existed as of May 31st, 2024, and then on top of that, you added 3 years of anticipated wage increases, and that's how you got to that sizable difference that you mentioned earlier.
Right, so I just wanted to point out that it was $217,000, and it increased $256,000 to $473,000 in 1 year. Well, the 2024 rates to be expected.
It wouldn't be 1 year, it would be the rate increase that went into effect in June of 24 that wasn't in that original historic number. then a wage increase that would go into effect June 1st, 2025. And then by the time the new rates were approved by the PSC, you would have eclipsed the June 1st, 2026 wage increases. And then on top of that, you were adding basically three full-time equivalents to that base year number that was originally 217,000 to get you to the 473.
So I guess the question is for the board, why, if there's no growth and, I mean, it would seem to me that the work is probably pretty similar. Why would we need to add 3 more bodies?
We didn't have
We didn't have anybody.
We have no linemen whatsoever.
So there's
I
none.
came back as a retired employee, as a lineman, just to get them through until we could hire somebody. The problem is, for the past years, everybody we hire, we train them, we send them to school, they go to NYSEC and make 3 times as much as what Rouses Point can afford to pay them. So that's where we're at. So we ended up hiring 3 young guys to run our line crew that hopefully will be here for a long time with this wage increase that they're talking about. We have to be competitive. We're not competitive with New York State Gas and Electric, of course not. We can't even be close. But
We need to be competitive with like Plattsburgh Municipal, because we had a couple people leave for there also.
right.
So we have to try to, in order to keep our electric system going, we have to have these linemen. If we don't have these linemen,
Oh, I
Let's go with
agree,
the
I
next-
just didn't realize that we didn't have anybody for years,
Yeah.
and now
As
we're
they
going
retired,
to,
I mean, we had 1 guy retired, or 2 of us retired, 3 of us actually retired, and it's hard to get people,
it's hard to get trained people.
train people.
So do I understand?
I worked for the
correctly?
village for 37 years as a lineman, or line supervisor and stuff. And I retired 25 years ago. So I mean, you know, you just can't get a lineman off the street, you know?
Yeah.
So
Go ahead.
do I understand that the personnel haven't had a raise in 2 years? That's been postponed? Is
No,
that
no,
what I'm
no,
understanding?
no, they've had their,
Okay.
well, we just hired new people in the last 2 years.
Oh, okay.
We had to be competitive with our
Yes.
rates, or else they go to the city of Plattsburgh or to
Referring back to
Lake.
24 and 25.
Right. When we signed the contract with the union, that's what, they go by that. Anybody
No,
else?
that situation is not specific to Rouses Point. A lot of municipalities, especially smaller utilities in the state of New York, are having similar problems. They don't have enough line crew. They don't have qualified and experienced line crew. And they've been losing them to investor-owned utilities. They've been losing them to the fiber optic utilities. And in some cases, they even lost them to other municipal systems. And Rouses Point, going back to the base year that this rate study was predicated on, was basically operating on a skeleton crew. And this rate increase allows them to bring the labor force up to a palpable number of experienced people to basically keep the lights on, which was not happening in the past. There was a lot of putting Band-Aids on things. So in this case here, the addition of the 2 linemen and 1 electrician approved by the board, and if that gets approved by the Public Service Commission and allowing for revenues to increase to cover the salaries of these 3 additional employees plus the wage increases, that should get you to a place where you need to operate a viable electric utility. It wasn't happening in the past.
Well, to back up what Brian said, you guys looked around, and I guess the only municipality that paid less than us was Tupper. And we were, that's what I was told, was that we were.
Tupper Lakes was making more than what Rouses Point was.
So that-
We were the lowest.
Now we're the lowest?
We were the lowest. For wages.
Can I ask a fact? I jumped on top of Nick, he was gonna ask a question, and I know what he was gonna ask. You were talking, when you said 7 cents, 8 cents, 9 cents, you made that comment, around the state, that's the base rate, right? And now we're proposing going to 3.5. And you said 7, 8, 9 around the state, some are 10, some are 12, that's the base rate, right?
Yes.
Do you know how we compare with other NIPA municipalities? I guess there's 51 of us, right? I mean, do you know how we compare with them?
In terms of rates to your customers?
Yeah, are those rates that you gave me for the whole shebang or just NIPA?
Yeah, you are, without having solid numbers in hand to me right now, I have to believe the cents per kilowatt hour to the Rouses Point customers are probably in the lowest 5 municipal electric utilities in the state. I'm not going to say you're the lowest. I think there is at least one that I'm aware of that's lower than you right now.
Now or where we're going to? Or now or where we might be going to? Which number are you talking about, now or the future proposal?
That's the existing. If this rate increase gets approved by the PSC in totality of $1 million, you're probably going to still be in the lowest 10 of the 48 municipalities in New York State.
Thank you.
Is there a limit to the amount of money that we're allowed to have in the fund that covers extra expenses?
Yes, you're never going to find anything written from the regulatory bodies, whether that be the Public Service Commission or the PSC. What they recommend is that you have no more than 2 years of your annual depreciation expense in that reserve fund. Okay, so that's kind of like a back of the napkin handshake. You're not going to find it in any regulatory or authoritative document. But they would like you to have, at any given time, no more than 2 years. So Rouses Point depreciation expense every year is about $300,000. So they would like you to have no more than $600,000. They want you to have something in there, but no more than $600,000, because if you go into a third year of cash reserves, that probably means you haven't been spending it based upon what you should have been spending it on. So that means you're probably not making capital improvements to the degree that you should be. So they kind of have a just a casual conversation type of response to that. Is how much do you think is reasonable? 2 years is the number that I keep on hearing. On the operational cash side, that the thing that I just talked about was on the cash reserve side for future replacement of existing operating property. On the operating cash side, they would really like to see you have at least 3 months cash on hand. Rouses Point, as we sit here today, has more than 3 months. So from an operational cash standpoint, you have more than what they are prescribing. But to the detriment, your operating cash on hand monthly is higher because you have no reserves. You didn't transfer anything to the reserves. But with costs going up, therefore cash outlays going up, your cash balances, even though they're greater than 3 months operational cash, they're going to, if you don't get this rate increase, they're going to continue to decline, probably to the tune of 1 or 2 months cash on hand per year for the next couple of years, if you don't get this increase.
So the $300,000 extra that's going to the fund out of the $1 million is allowed if we already have what we need?
Well, the $300,000 cash reserve is that depreciation expense is it's an accounting terminology. It's the systematic devaluation of your operating property that's currently out there providing service. So as time goes on, you're going to have to replace that equipment, that operating property, whether it be in this form of coals, substation equipment, overheads, primaries, secondaries. You're gonna have to replace that at some point because they have a useful life. So if you don't have any reserves put away to fund those improvements when they're needed, you're not gonna be able to make those capital improvements. So of the $1 million of additional revenues that the village is seeking from the Public Service Commission, $300,000 of that should be, if they give you the $1 million, you should be able to put $300,000 a year into your reserves. And then therefore the remaining dollars are there for your operational cash needs during the course of the year. But right now, Rouses Point has 0 cash reserves because they've been using it for their cash for operational needs. And then therefore, once you go in for a larger capital improvement, you're either going to have to fund that through operational cash, which has been declining from year to year, or you're going to have to go out and do long-term financing and then have the carrying cost of interest expense on top of that. That's the only way you're going to be able to add to your plan. But if you get the revenue that's requested here, it is anticipated that you will meet your current operational costs, you will set up your depreciation reserve fund, you will adjust for any normal capital improvements that you do during the course of the year, and you will establish a rate of return profitability to allow you to reinvest in your plan in the future over time, whether that be in capital improvements, whether that be in labor force, whether that be in other costs that the village needs that they're currently not doing. So that's where you can stand with that.
One more question and I'll be done. So how did we fund 12 years worth of deficits if everything that you just said is accurate? We shouldn't have had that kind of money sitting around to fund 12 years worth of deficits.
So what happened was, prior to, I think it was 1998, prior to 1998, the village of Rouses Point was regulated by the New York Power Authority. After 1998, the village was regulated by the Public Service Commission. So before 1998, all rates that the village of Rouses Point charged its customers were based on rate filings that were done by the Power Authority, not done by Rouses Point. The Power Authority did their own rate studies for the municipality, and they determined what the rates would be to provide everything that we talked about: operational cash needs, reserves, rate of return, and capital improvements. During the 1990s, or I guess in this case here, in the 1980s, the New York Power Authority designed rates that were fairly high for the times because they wanted to set rates that would last for anywhere from 7 to 10 years. Okay? So then what happened was the rates were probably a little elevated from where they needed to be. I wasn't doing the work for Rouses Point at that time, so this is pure conjecture. Then what happened was the demand, customer demand, went up tremendously in the 1990s and early 2000s. And then therefore, the Village of Rouses Point Electric Utility was generating very large positive cash balances, okay, to allow them to meet the customer's needs at that time, and generating very good cash flow. It could have very easily have been gone back into the Power Authority, and maybe at that time, I have no idea, but I'm just going to say that they probably could have came in and said, we're too profitable, and we're making too much cash, and then therefore we should have reduced the rates back in, let's say, the mid-90s. But that never occurred. So the village of Rouses Point generated significant cash balances, which carried them into the 2000s. Sometime in 2010, I would say, the customer load changed, decreased dramatically. And at that point in time, the revenue stream that was happening at the time was really not at that reduced level, was not really meeting the fixed cost of the utility. Fixed cost meaning your costs are not going to change no matter what your revenue stream is. So every single year, the profitability of the rates, because of the decline in customer consumption, was basically doing a reversal at Rouses Point, in that the revenues were no longer generating positive cash. However, they were living, Rouses Point was literally living on its past successes based upon the rates that were in place in the 1980s, 1990s, early 2000s. So, for lack of a better term, it allowed you, those positive cash balances and cash flow allowed you to kick the can down the road and to say, yeah, I know my rates, my current rates are not meeting my current costs. However, I'm using cash from my past successes, my past fund balance, my past surplus, my past cash balances, and we're bringing that in. And since 2014, every year, my firm, or I, within my firm, write a letter to the mayor and the board that says, yes, your financial stability is still quite good. However, the gross profit margin built into your existing rates have been eroding to a point where your financial stability, while still very good, is starting to decline. So 2014 hits, generates a net operating loss. 2015 hits, again, a net operating loss. And I talked about this with the mayors and the boards after each fiscal year ended that said, you know, we're really eating into the cash balances that we had accumulated in our strong financial years. And we're allowed, you know, we can kick the can down the road in increasing rates because we have this ability of this cash flow, significant cash flow, to help us get through these years. While the fact of the matter is, the situation's never changed at Rouses Point. The consumption from customers continued to stay low, while costs continued to rise. Okay, so cash balances were continuing, just like profitability was being reduced. We're going into a net operating loss. Rate of return was in the negative. Cash flow was in the negative. Rouses Point was losing cash flow every single year. So it allowed you to get to this point, but probably for a good 10 years now, the existing rate structure has not provided proper revenue to meet today's operational costs, hasn't been doing it for at least the last 10 years. But we were living, Rouses Point was living off of the cash flow, the liquidity, and the financial stability that was generated in the 1990s and early 2000s to allow you to make that decision, we're not going to raise rates, okay? But at some point in time, the financial stability that you achieved and the financial greatness that you achieved in the 1990s and 2000s is no longer viable to make you a reliable electric utility from a financial perspective. Your rates are not covering your costs, and they haven't for a long time. So you have been able to go this long, to answer your first question, you have been able to go this long only because you did so well for such a long period of time coming into this down period.
But you can,
period without period, without this rate increase.
But you can easily
there's no
see,
reason-
you can easily see,
That downward trend will continue.
you can easily see though why a mayor, whatever, would wanna, what do you mean we got $15 million in the bank? I'm not raising rates. If we got 15 million, next year's 14 million, next year 13 million. I mean, you can make the argument that the village did the right thing.
But you can
Because,
make the argument that now we have to replenish that.
but you, I mean, you can make both arguments. You could say we should have increased it a little by little by little, and today it would be a nothing situation, we'd be used to it. Or use the savings and don't put the cost on other people year after year after year. You can make both arguments.
But are we putting ourselves in a situation where we're gonna be back? So if a business customer comes in and that puts us in a better situation than this rate increase would, then we could conceivably be back into the situation that he just described, where we've got all this money sitting there that we've put in that maybe wasn't necessary, and you know, it can get this, just history repeat itself all over again, because we're already budgeting in the $300,000 extra, and then we would get more if a business does come in, and then we know they're not gonna decrease rates.
The business has to have numerous employees in order for us to get more power.
So that leads into.
But does that mean you're not gonna let any business in if they don't have employees?
That leads to
I mean,
a question that last year, say we used on average 7,000 megawatts of power a month. If we bring in a company that uses another 7 megawatts of power, that would put us at our allotment, and it'd be great for the village. But if I understand your conversation, or this conversation, that if we brought in a company that used 100 megawatts of power a month, that would really, beyond that 13.7 megawatts, it would make no difference to the village electric department. Is that correct?
Correct.
But the base rate for the business customer is higher than it is for the residential customer, so they're gonna pay more, there's gonna be more profit.
Correct, but there's also, if they use more power than what we're allotted, then that goes to everybody. The supplemental power goes to everybody.
But not if we use Rider A.
Right, not
If
with
you
Rider
get
A.
Rider A.
Which should be used, right? We have Rider A, that should be a
You
good.
guys already approved it.
There's four.
What's that?
Rider A is already approved.
Yes.
There's four.
So it's not a
So
if,
that-
it's
that's-
yes.
Brings
Rider
us
A
back
applies.
to,
So does
Are we gonna
Rider
be
A
in the same
increase
situation?
the electric department's income?
No.
So it makes no difference whether it's Rider A or not. Once we go with the 13.7 allotted megawatts, there's no further benefit to the village to sell more. You
Oh,
can
there's
sell
huge-
more,
Huge benefit.
but
yes,
the village electric department, okay? Not the village. Let's not get picky with the words here. The village electric department doesn't realize any more income once we go beyond the 13.7 megawatts of power. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct. Whether you use Rider A or you use it on the industrial rate class, once you go past that, you're all into supplemental power, which is a pass-through. So the only way to decrease the necessary revenue that's built into the rate increase filing is to bring your hydro allotment up to the ceiling, and you will make some profitability on that, but it would, at this point in time, it would nowhere near approach the $1 million that we are saying is needed to put the electric utility in a viable position from a rate of return perspective.
Okay, so bringing in a company that uses 100 megawatts of power a month, while it may benefit the village in other ways, it will not benefit the village electric department.
Unless they bring jobs and you can raise
Is
that.
that correct? Well, if you could bring in 2,000 jobs, great, everybody's gonna love it.
But we don't need 2,000 to
But I'm-
increase it. There's smaller
But
numbers than
what I'm
that.
saying is, if it just comes in, if a business comes in and uses 10 employees and uses 100 megawatts of power,
Right.
it's not gonna benefit the electric department income.
it's extra
That's
revenue
correct.
based,
So if you do not, if you sell power in over your hydro allotment, circa 2.7, it all goes to supplemental power. Supplemental power, whether it be through Rider A or through the industrial rate class, gets all passed on to the customers. And so, since it's the burden of the customer, dollar for dollar, there is no benefit to the utility. You're not going to be making any money on that. You're not going to be losing any money, but you're not going to be making any money.
So in order to raise that rate, we have to bring in employment, jobs. Is that correct?
So,
And then, and Ken can answer that question, but you also have to have the ability to get your hydro allotment increased by the New York Power Authority for that economic development situation. Correct, Ken?
To increase the hydro allotment, yes, but, I mean, depending on what the rates are, if you're selling supplemental power for more than you're paying for it, then there is obviously a profit to be made there, and a benefit to the electrical zone. So depending on what the rates look like, selling more power could generate more revenue.
Is it
So-
possible to charge
hold
more?
on. I got a question. So, we're throwing out 100 megawatts of power here. What is that gonna, whether we make money or not, what is that gonna do to our system? How fast is that gonna deteriorate our system to where we're going to have to replace it if we bring that much power in?
So I'm not an engineer, and I'm not sure why we're throwing out 100 megawatts of power.
I don't either,
I'm
but
fairly
that's where it
certain that you cannot sell 100 megawatts of power without just rebuilding your entire system, and at a cost much greater than you would ever realize from the sale of it. I think we're talking about somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 megawatts, perhaps. And you would need to do engineering studies to figure out if you could deliver that amount of power, what improvements potentially might be required, who would pay for it. And those are engineering questions and not necessarily legal ones. So I can't tell you that, unfortunately.
Who sets the supplemental power rate?
What's that?
Who sets the supplemental power rate? Is that
New York State Municipal, yeah, NIMPA.
What is the supplemental rate, do you know, per kilowatt,
It varies.
compared to what the hydro rate is?
Yeah, what's the current NIPA rates?
It depends on your usage.
Yeah, it varies.
Depends on your usage, that's why it changes every month.
It even depends on the weather.
Your PPA.
Yeah, the AC.
So I mean,
I think
there's no,
it's 74 currently of,
74 on that, right?
yes.
Any other questions for these gentlemen? Well, we got them here.
Thank you very much for your
Yes,
time.
gentlemen,
Yes,
thank you
it's
very
been
much for
very
your
helpful.
Thank you.
thank you, Bill.
participation, your presentation.
Been very helpful.
Yes, it's been very helpful, very informative.
Okay, all good?
I believe we're all good. Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen. And we'll get on to.
Have a good evening.
Yep, have a good evening.
Bye.
Thank you, too. Thank you. Well.
Thank you.
Okay. Reports of the mayors and trustees. Trustee Arnold, do you have a,
I have nothing for tonight.
trustee Pelkey?
I think this was very informative for the board and for our residents. Hopefully, with the hometown cable, we'll get out there. I know, Gary, you probably still have some more questions that hopefully we can help you with. Back when they said about the 90s and the 2000s, when we used to make a lot of money, I was one of the ones working for the electric department at that time. And of course, we had a very large industrial customer that was here that left us. And one time I was meeting with some of the engineers in our substation, and they told me that they were the perfect customer because they used the power during the summer, and your village residents would use the power during the winter. So your load would stay consistent through the whole year, perfectly leveled out, where they would, use their cooling, their chillers, or whatever in their manufacturing. where they wouldn't use the heat. Of course, they had fuel or propane or natural gas. So the load through the summer, or through the whole year was a nice constant load where we can make lots of money through the whole year. Unfortunately, in the wintertime, in the summertime, we don't have a lot of load. In the wintertime, it's all electric heat. Of course, that brings us up to our demand, which our son said was over 8 megawatts. I mean, if we were using, you know, if we had a perfect customer like we used to have, that's where we made a lot of money, a lot of revenue.
Right, but there probably isn't going to be that kind of customer again for us, so, you know, I don't
That's why
like to
we're
get
considering
into.
the rating.
Right, and I don't like to get into the drama, I read it all, I hear about it. That's why I'm concentrating on the dollars and the facts.
Yeah.
And, you know, I feel like we're paying for the past, right? Like, people should have been charged this amount all along. Now, all of a sudden, we all get to cover that expense. And we're being asked to put money in for the future. So, you know, and I think that 153% rate just on the base is, you know, it's kind of like, is it necessary? Is that necessary? Or would 100% suffice?
Well, that's why we had to hire BSD to do this study. I mean, we couldn't do it ourselves. They have to be a certified professional accounting outfit that does this study. And I mean, he's been doing it for many years, and I have a lot of faith in him.
We're going on their recommendations.
Yeah, we go under their recommendations. They're the professionals. I mean, it's like, you know, if you need repairs done in your house, you have a professional come in, and you know, you might get, you know, an estimate or whatever, and give you guidance and direction of what you really need. And this is what we have to do.
The Public Service Commission's role is to do that due diligence, as they mentioned.
Right. They're like
That's
the
kind of
watchdogs
question they'll ask.
over BSD. The Public Service Commission is not going to let Rouses Point do anything more than what we're allowed to do, bottom line. I mean, what I kind of like to hear them say is we're still one of the cheapest in the state, or in the country, actually.
He did.
When you think about it.
He did. He said we're in the bottom 5.
Yeah.
And he said even with this rate increase, we're gonna be in the bottom 10. We're still going to be
And that's
below
just the
Plattsburgh.
51.
I understand that, but, you know, that kind of is neither here nor there for the 153% increase and why it's happening and what's causing it.
It's a hard pill to swallow.
So that's
Yes.
that's all I was concentrating on, what's causing it,
Yep.
and,
What's
you know, why
causing
is it
is
happening?
40 years before us that nobody's done it. It should
Right.
have gone up, like you said,
Every
half
5
a
years,
cent every.
10 years.
The other
So-
thing is this number, the 153, it's estimated to be good for another 5 years. And then after 5 years would be another rate study, right, Chris? And so we wouldn't have an increase next year, an increase next, well, unless the PPAC line goes up, but that number is expected to be solid for 5 years.
That's why I said we're funding the
These
future.
rate studies cost about 20,000, right? So
Correct.
you want to make sure
Yes.
you've
We
got
want to
another
make
year
sure we
set.
get
ten
a
back.
study.
And do you have to have a rate study for every
Oh, yeah.
tariff filing?
Yes,
But
every
the
time.
decrease
It was
too, if you want to
27,000.
Huh?
It was 27,000.
Yeah, it's 27,000.
We're done, yes.
What are your reserves at now for electrical? From all those great years, what's your reserve at now?
I can't answer that question off the top of my head, so.
2.5 million? That sound right?
It's like 7.
Like I said, I can't answer that question off the top of my head. Well, I'll have the numbers in front of me.
Okay, trustee Pelkey, are you
At
done?
least 2.5
Oh,
million?
yeah, thank you.
Trustee Southwood?
It's in the balance
For the
sheet.
season.
I have a couple of things.
No one asked me.
First of all, regarding I don't talk very well over other people, so I would appreciate people use 2 ears to listen while I use 1 mouth. I'm a little bit of a quiet guy, so I kind of need the help, right?
Go ahead.
All right, let's do this. So regarding the presentation, hearing all the questions, I was reminded of a Supreme Court justice who was very quiet on the bench and said, I have smart colleagues, so I don't have to ask. I just wait and people will ask the question I'm thinking of. Every single question that I was going to think of, someone in the audience asked it. So thank you all for showing up and asking intelligent questions. They're really great. I appreciate it. I also have, since the last meeting, we received a response from Martin and Lagudas regarding the comprehensive plan. The next steps are there'll be a conference call with them and the mayor and the administrator, and then after that, they will schedule a final public workshop. You know, that's to be scheduled, and then hopefully we'll be seeing the end of that. Excuse me, finale of that. The last thing I have is just as a reminder, there's been some questions about the water plant bid. That went out to bid in December 15th of last year. So just before the holidays. As of today, that's only been about 5 weeks. For a large plant project like that, and then when you factor in the holidays, no, we would not have received a bid back by then. Even for a small scale project in the middle of the year. New York average is, I think, around 4 weeks. So we're not behind on the bidding process on that. That's still out there, we're waiting to hear back when that bidding process is in. That's all I have.
Thank you, Trustee Southwick. Trustee Southwick.
And I have one more thing, just to reiterate what Trustee Southwick was saying about the water plant. We did have a construction meeting here with contractors came in and asked Barton and Judas some questions, and I was really surprised at how many contractors really showed up. There was quite a few people in this room that came for the questions and, you know, the bid process. Right. And is that bid process still going to be opened on February 4th? Correct? Mm-hmm. February 4th. So it's nice to see quite a few contractors come and get the bid packages and ask the questions. That means there's competition, and hopefully they'll come in at a really good price. Where if you only had one company come in, they could highball us, you don't know. But this way, there's quite a few contractors here, and I was really impressed at how many people were in the room. It was a really good meeting.
Actually, I just have a quick question.
Sure.
For minutes purposes, do the people who ask questions of our presenters, should they go to the clerk and give their name for, yeah, so if you ask questions of the presenters before you leave, make sure you give your name to the clerk so that it's accurately reflected in the minutes.
And in that regard, I didn't know if you were going to officially say comments after that. Obviously, there was dialogue. I did have a letter that I was
Yeah, no, I was going to address it.
Oh, I wasn't sure. Okay, that's good.
So,
Perfect.
And anybody else from the board have anything to say?
No, I have nothing.
Okay, any other reports? No, we're all good. So I have two people that wanted to address the board, so Matt Boyer, you have the...
Yes, thank you. Again, appreciate the presentation from the auditor and the attorney. I did, just out of concern, I was here last meeting, I'll give you a letter, I'll read the letter tonight, but I thought I'd give everybody a letter written by myself, Matt Ware and Alex Berry, both village residents, love the village, and of course our business is here as well. I just, out of concern, it's never easy for any business to have an increase, whether you've got to do it or not. So I did speak with a few businesses in town and just tell them, you know, some of my feelings that I at least wanted to share. You know, several of them looked at the letter first and said, we agree with it. So I wasn't going to get everyone to sign it, we didn't need that. But felt like at least go to the meeting and we'd like you to at least read it. So I know no one wants to be here any longer. I know this is a long meeting, but you know, to the mayor, I'll read it as quickly as possible. Some of the points have been hit on tonight very well, frankly, from the good questions. But basically, we're writing on behalf of some of the business owners and residents of the village of Rouses Point regarding the recent discussions and information circulating about the possible increase to the rates. I'll summarize to speed it up a little bit. You know, our concern comes from what appears to be a lack of some, you know, clear and consistent communication. Some information being shared suggests that the rate study stage is what we're in, while other information points that the process goes back as far back as last summer. So for an issue that affects everybody, every resident, every business in the village who's out there budgeting, trying to figure out, you know, how they pay their employees bonuses and everything, that lack of transparency is just troubling. And I know it's hard to do the increase, it's not in the letter, but the more you could have shared early on to say, we've got a real problem, would help us all in the planning stage. We understand costs go up. Anyone who runs a business and manages a household knows that. We also understand that at times rate increases may be necessary. However, raising rates should not be the only solution discussed, nor should it come as a surprise to the people footing the bill. In many businesses, when fixed costs increase and cannot be easily reduced, the focus shifts to increasing the volume. Simply put, selling more product covers those costs without putting the entire burden on the existing customers. We believe the same logic applies. We learned a little bit on the supplemental. Probably doesn't make us any money, doesn't lose us any money, and I think there are some facts in that, or variables within that rate that still allows us to go towards our fixed cost and so forth. So again, it doesn't harm if we necessarily sell more power, and we'd love jobs to be attached to that. Right now, with no meaningful, large amounts of power usage at the former Pfizer site, I mean, that's the elephant in the room. Following its closure, the village is clearly selling far less electricity than it did. It's understandable that this puts pressure on our electric budget. However, instead of defaulting to large rate increases, there should be some serious and public discussion about economic development and growing the customer base. Yes, that's what my firm does, so it's a little bit self-serving, but I think it helps our whole village. I live here too. So if there's a way that we can get some positive economic development, I'll summarize this paragraph. Hopefully it's the right development that we can increase that allotment. I think it'd be healthier for the village overall. We believe there are ways, especially with the rider rate that's been implemented, to sell more power without adversely affecting all the residents. Similar to the city of Plattsburgh, which has had rider rate for a long time. If rates are increased without addressing the bigger picture, residents, small businesses, and village residents are left carrying the load, while the underlying problem remains unsolved. Again, we learned a lot about that tonight. So I just think we need to consider how we sell more power and hopefully make some more money, because water and sewer costs aren't going down either. So I think we'll probably hear more about that in the future. But just asking for clearer communication, greater transparency, and honest conversation with the voters, the residents, and the business of Rouses Point before the decisions are made. Better information, a little more open discussion like we had tonight. Frankly, if this had happened back in June, I think it might have been a little healthier. So that's all. Just my point. I'm all about communication, even the information that we might not want to hear. It's better hearing about it earlier on than after.
Can I comment? There's a misconception that the village did something wrong, right? This is what the internet says on this.
Okay.
I do not want to, sir. I do not want to hear about social media. I do not want to hear about social media.
This isn't social media. This is the internet.
Internet.
Fine. Mark, you've got 3 minutes.
I forgive you for calling me an elephant. We're good there, right? It wasn't any problem. So Mark Haynes, right, ERS, obviously I spoke last time. I'll make it quick and brief, right? I agree wholeheartedly with Matt. I'm glad he kind of put that to pen to paper about the communication, right? This was everyone was blindsided by this. There was no advance notice, all right? I don't think there was ever a doubt that there was an issue, right? We brought it up in 2023 about the balance of the budget and the reserves being depleted so quickly. 24, we tried to work on a resolution. We said you can have high-density power users that aren't going to harm the village, use the capacity, and benefit overall economy of this area and balance the budget. All right, we're willing to do that again. Okay, with all the things with rider array and all this and all the protections. Right? We're not here to hurt anyone. We're here to help make sure that rates stay the same, right? And we will buy the extra power. And if the village board and the mayor will sit down and work with us, right, we'll come up with a solution that benefits everyone, right? If you don't, then I don't know what else we can do, all right? So we're obviously running a business. We have a viable property. We have good infrastructure, and we're willing to work with you as we always have been. to try to get that communication going, to bring in and attract high-density users, manufacturing, other things, data centers, whatever it is, you have power that is not being used, right? And if we go beyond that, it's now a damage to any village resident, and they'll be creating, jobs and other economic incentives. So we can go back with your support to try to get more hydro, which would put more money into the village's pockets, right? So we're here, we're not going anywhere. Work with us, you'll benefit everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to say something.
Sure. Go ahead.
If you go back to at least 2017, in the budget messages by the budget officer at that time, you will see that this was brought to the board's attention, along with the audit reports. I give this board a lot of credit for what they're trying to do right now. There's two reasons why this hasn't been done before. One is it's a costly endeavor, and two, it's a politically unpopular. And that's the bottom line here. That's the bottom line. Anybody can come up and say they're going to build a castle, but you got to show some numbers.
We need plans. That's, as to, we're willing to work with you, bring us some plans.
I think
Bring the village some plans.
The board through the years, I think, have been pretty explicit.
We really don't have anything to do, that's the planning board. But if you have a plan to help the village, bring it to the board. That's all I'm saying. Okay, thank you everyone for coming tonight. It was very informative, everybody had a good meeting.
Thank you.
Good questions, thank you very much for your participation.
I need a motion.
I need a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Aye.